Hello, and welcome to History Bytes. Today, we're talking about the Battle of Zama, a crucial turning point in the Second Punic War between the Roman Republic and Carthage. Let's get some background. The First Punic War had concluded in 241 BC, allowing Rome to gain some land in Sicily, and later, full control of Sardinia and the rest of Sicily. This grew hatred in Carthage against the Romans, as the full annexation of Sicily and the expansion into Sardinia was in violation of the peace treaty at the end of the First Punic War. Tensions were high for the next 23 years as Rome pushed the Carthaginians out of Sicily to the west of the island. This rising tension would lead to the eruption of what many scholars call the bloodiest and most ruthless war of the ancient world. In 219 BC, the infamous Carthaginian general Hannibal sacked Saguntum, a Spanish city that was a Roman ally. This prompted Rome to declare war at the start of 218 BC. Hannibal marched north through Iberia and South France, crossing the Alps with the help of his Gallic allies, catching the Romans completely by surprise and crushing them in battle. When Hannibal reached South Italy, he crushed the Romans at the Battle of Cannae. This defeated the largest army Rome had ever assembled. With Rome severely weakened, countries such as Macedon and Syracuse joined the fight against Rome. Rome was in severe trouble. The fighting had spread to Greece and Sicily with new enemies, and Carthage was attempting naval invasions of Sardinia and Roman ports in Sicily, but they were eventually beaten back, buying the Romans valuable breathing time. Rome knew that if it was to avoid utter collapse and perhaps turn this war around from disaster, something desperate and dangerous would need to happen. Enter Scipio. Publius Cornelius Scipio. Does anyone else find that bust absolutely terrifying? He assembled an expeditionary force and invaded Nova Carthago, the capital of Carthaginian Iberia, in 209 BC. He kicked so much butt at the Battle of Ilipa that Carthage's rule in Iberia was ended. Permanently. He then turned around and said, that was kind of easy, so he launched an invasion of Africa. By now, the Carthaginian Senate was starting to panic, so they started desperately amassing troops in Africa to face the Romans. But after a surprise attack at Utica, wiping out more Carthaginian troops, Scipio had another ideal. He said, I'll cause a big battle in Africa. That will worry Hannibal enough in Italy to pull back and face me, leaving my fellow Romans alone. So the Battle of the Great Plains ensued. Scipio destroyed Carthage's men and their Spanish allies on the battlefield, making them flee all the way to Spain, where Scipio sent some of his own allies to pursue and wipe them out. The battle was so decisive, it almost made Carthage sue for peace there and then. But at the last minute, they decided to recall Hannibal and try his tactics against Scipio at Zama in 202 BC. The Battle of Zama. Hannibal reached Africa to face Scipio. Hannibal arrived with 36,000 infantry, 4,000 cavalry, and 80 war elephants, while Scipio had a total of 29,000 infantry and 6,100 cavalry. Hannibal had his cavalry on the flanks and his elephants ready to charge. Hannibal had studied Scipio's previous battles and pulled his third line of infantry back to prevent Scipio's favoured tactic of encircling the enemy and crushing them. Scipio somewhat mirrored Hannibal, with his cavalry taking the flanks and 3 lines of infantry making up the bulk of his forces. By far the greatest threat to Scipio was those war elephants. So he devised a genius plan. The battle begun. The elephants charged. Scipio ordered his cavalry to blow horns, panicking the elephants and causing a stampede, where some of the animals turned and severely damaged Hannibal's wing. The Roman cavalry took advantage of this and chased the Carthaginian wing cavalry off the battlefield. There were still many elephants left, however. Scipio was ready. He knew that elephants could only charge in a straight line, so he opened channels in his infantry, where the elephants would charge down, harming no one and where his light skirmishers could deal with the animals away from his main infantry. Now Hannibal's wing cavalry had collapsed and his elephants had failed. The Roman infantry reformed its lines. The Roman cavalry charged down the right flank, with Hannibal's own cavalry fleeing the field. All cavalry had left the field for both sides. The elephants were dead. It was Roman infantry against Carthaginian. Both commanders aligned their troops into a straight line, clashing together where the battle drew to a ruthless stalemate. In the killing of the elephants and the fleeing of the Carthaginian cavalry, with Roman cavalry in hot pursuit, the battlefield had been levelled to man against man combat. The battle swung, with the edges of the Roman lines growing weak, threatening a collapse and the encirclement of Scipio's troops. Scipio desperately reinforced his flanks, but he knew the Carthaginians were close to breaking his sides. As Scipio truly began to doubt whether the day would be his, Roman war horns sounded. From behind Hannibal's lines a cloud of dust was emerging. The Roman cavalry that was pursuing Hannibal's men was returning from completely behind Hannibal's lines. The cavalry charged at full speed into the backs of the Carthaginian troops. The Roman flanks had a new lease of life, driving themselves into the Carthaginian lines, meeting the Roman cavalry and completely surrounding the Carthaginian troops. Carthaginian soldiers, even Hannibal himself, desperately clambered away from the Roman troops, fleeing for their lives. All who remained and fought were annihilated by the Romans. 20,000 Carthaginians were wiped out. Another 20,000 were taken prisoner. The total Roman losses? 2,500. The Carthaginians lost all respect for Hannibal. Carthage was defeated. Rome reigned supreme over Europe and the Mediterranean for the next 600 years. I hope you enjoyed today's episode on the Battle of Zama. If you learned something new, press like and subscribe if you're new. Leave a comment on what you thought, and I'll see you next time.